Okay, so welcome back. Today what we're going to do is we're actually going to talk about two new laptops. One that I've actually already talked about, the T15g Gen 2, and then I'm also now going to talk about the Thinkpad P15 Gen 2 since it's been released. And one neat thing about these laptops is they are very similar, and you'll see that as I go through the comparison today, which shouldn't take too long because there are a lot of things that are the same. But there are some key differences, and those are the differences I believe makes one a workstation and the other into something more like a very powerful multimedia device, really geared more towards people like me, I believe, or gamers. Well, I guess I game. Uh, videographers, people doing photo editing, that type of stuff. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it, and I'm going to jump over to my spreadsheet, and I will have a link to the spreadsheet below so you can actually reference it. Okay, starting with on the left-hand side, I have your ThinkPad P15 Gen 2, and then I also have the P15 or the T15 Gen 2 on the right-hand side. And the thing that I want to point out at the top is we do have a difference in price here, but we'll get more into that when I get to the end of the interview, so you can, or excuse me, the comparison, so you can see kind of, why the prices are different. But moving to the processor to begin with, you'll notice that the options are exactly the same. Initially, when I spoke about the T15G, I was a little bit confused as to why they have the Xeon processor over here. But once again, I get it. And it's, to me, better to have more options than to not. But it wouldn't have shocked me if they did not offer this here, since the workstation really is your P series. But in this case, you can get both. And all the other options are the same as far as the i5, the i7s, and then also the i9. Jumping to the operating system, okay, this is another one that was kind of confusing to me, only because I saw that all the systems that are offered, operating systems that are offered on the P15 Gen 2 were also offered on the T15 Gen 2, but they also give you the option to have Red Hat. And I don't really understand why you wouldn't give the workstation user, the P series buyer, that option. So that one is a little bit confusing to me. If you have any idea as to why that makes sense to put it on the really, like I said, the non-workstation versus putting it on the P15, feel free to leave it down in the comments. The next thing we'll talk about are the displays. The displays are exactly the same, considering the fact that there is it's the same frame. It's the exact same body, same laptop. So they give you the same options for screens. They still even have this basically saying that it supports up to 4K on the T20 or 1200 for the T15G. By the way, we haven't gotten to this yet, but this laptop or this GPU is actually not even offered on the T15. So it just tells you that there was a cut and paste job here, only because these things are so similar. Well, they got it right over here because, yes, you do get the option for the NVIDIA T1200, but you don't get it over here. So that point is kind of, could have been left off. Which takes me to the GPUs. So this is where it really starts to get different. First off, if you look over to the left-hand side, you'll see that on the P15G, you're going to get more choices. And in my mind, this is the reason why there's a difference between the price points. Because if you look at the price points here, and I locked the cell so you can see it, $17.09 versus $21.59. I mean, that's $400, a little more than $400 price difference. Actually, it's $450. So if you think about it, the lower end card, this is the starting price, is your T1200 4G, 4 gigabytes, what I should say, DDR6. And that would be more kind of along the lines of I guess if you had to find a comparable GeForce card, I would say probably the 1650. But if you jump over here, you'll notice there is no 1650. That's an option, unlike the X1 Extreme. So the lowest card they have here is the 3070 8 gigabyte DDR6. And that makes sense that there is a pretty significant price difference between this card and that 3070. So now that we've kind of jumped into both of the differences, once again, you can see that this one is geared more toward, when I say this one, I mean the P15, is geared more towards that individual that's going to be doing, AutoCAD or any type of modeling software that would have needed that Quattro GPU versus over here, you may not necessarily have that need. I mean, don't get me wrong. Between the two, the one that I'm actually leaning more towards is the T15G. And I do, funny. I do modeling as well, but I don't do it to the extreme where I think I need a Quattro card. And because it isn't one of the main routine tasks that I usually do, I can't see springing for any of the Quattros when I could get the 3070 or the 3080, which I'd much rather have, because they're going to be more suitable for the things that I actually do on my laptop. I think that the really reason why there's a big difference in the price here, the starting price, is because of that reason. Now, if you spec one of these cards, that's, I would say maybe the A4000 and probably, yeah, let's say the 3070, the prices should be closer. Don't quote me on that because I haven't done it. And I think the last time I checked this, it still wasn't giving me the option to customize yet. So I'm curious to see when that pops in there, what the prices are going to look like then. The other part of this is, like I said, if I do decide to pick up one of these, it's definitely going to be the T15G, mainly because of this reason. And because I always like to spec my own laptops. I don't do it all the time, but if it's a better deal, I'd rather spec, because sometimes I'd rather just not include some things because I know I'm going to add them later, and it just makes more sense. Or it's more affordable for me to just buy, more memory or different or second, third hard drive or whatever. So I'm waiting really, really for the customization. The next thing would be the cameras. The cameras are exactly the same. When I looked at the sheet, there was I thought it was a typo, so I just kind of left it off. But yes, I believe the cameras are exactly the same. I don't think there is an option for a 1080 on either one of these devices, especially not the T15G, because that was never mentioned. It's just when I looked at the spec sheet for the P15, there was a little bit of confusion. So I think, like I said, I think it might have been just a typo. The memory is exactly the same, so you get up to 128 gigabytes of DDR4, and you get the option of ECC and non-ECC on either. If that error code checking is something that you're concerned about, yes, you can get the T15G still, or you can get which it does make sense for the workstation that you can have the ECC memory, or you can support ECC memory. Your storage is the same. You get 3 SSDs, which I think is just wonderful. That's another thing that sells this laptop to me over the smaller P1 or the X1 Extreme, actually, because I like storage. So, as a matter of fact, I have a second hard drive inside of my current Extreme, and I was last night moving stuff again because they get full really fast. If you're editing in 4K and if you're shooting in RAW, and if you game, yeah, good luck. You will fill up a hard drive, and it doesn't help that they only support up to a certain amount. I think on my laptop, it only went up to like 2 terabytes. So, yeah, I like having more hard drives. Let's see. The battery. So the battery life was another one that was kind of confusing. Well, I guess it can be confusing. And if you think about it, once again, I had to think about it to make this make sense. Your mobile mark scores for 2018 mobile mark scores for the P15 Gen 2 is 2 hours more than your T15 Gen 2. And I actually think that's because of the GPU, because to me, that's the really only difference I see as far as drawing wattage. Because if you spec the exact same CPU, and the only thing that you have to make different is going to be the GPU, and what Lenovo is going to do, just like any manufacturer, they're going to take whatever configuration basically sips the least amount of power, because they want that number to be as high as possible, because that's how you sell a laptop. You say, hey, I'm going to quote, that this model can, last for 9 hours, but that may not necessarily be the Xeon processor with the 3080 that lasts for that long. And I really should have said 7 hours, because that's what it is for the T15. But in this case, they probably took, and this is just me speculating, the T1200 put it with a lower end processor, and then said, hey, yeah, this is what we could get out of it. And I'm going to imagine they probably checked all of them just to see which one actually ran the longest. So I think that's really the difference here. The reason why you get 9 hours is because you just basically have some components that are going to take less battery power to run. So therefore, the battery is going to last longer. But the batteries are exactly the same. There was also a typo on here, but I fixed it. I think it was a reference to the watt hours. They had actually put like 90 or something like that. Let's see. Stereo speakers are the same. The security is the same with the exception of, and actually this was where I thought it was a typo, but it may not necessarily be. If you go over to the T15, it says that there is a full HD IR camera for Windows Hello. And I didn't see an option for full HD. And if you're not familiar with the terminology HD, high definition, what that generally refers to is 720p, which is what this camera is according to the performance spec worksheet. However, full HD would be a 1080p camera. And I believe the 1080p camera is actually an option on the P1 and the X1 Extreme. So I think maybe someone just messed up and put this here. If they did not, and it is an option, I will update this. But they did also say that if you got that camera, you would also have access to Windows Hello. That was nowhere mentioned on the P15's worksheet. So once again, I think it's an error on the T15G side. Next thing is going to be your ports. The only thing that's different about the ports is if you jump over to your P15 Gen 2, there is an HDMI port that will be downgraded to 2.1 if you have the lower spec GPU, so the T1200. And because the T1200 is not an option on your T15G Gen 2, you don't have to worry about that. You're going to have a 2.1 port regardless. And it also puts it in parentheses that this is going to basically be included with a GeForce RTX model. Okay, connectivity is all the same. The dimensions are exactly the same. Same screen, same frame, makes sense. Keyboard is the same. And then we get to the starting price. Once again, I went in and I looked at the starting price, and this is what I got for both of these. We'll jump up. Well, actually, you can still see it on the top because I have it locked here too, but it's also at the very bottom. Significant amount of money for a laptop. And one of the things that I can say is from what I've seen so far, it seems like these larger variants, and I mean the T15G compared to the X1 Extreme, this one has better thermals, even with the cooling bay that you can get as an option in the X1 Extreme. And the main reason is because of the size. I mean, if you start cramming all these powerful components into a small space, you do have to do something extreme to try to mitigate the heat, to try to cool it down, which is the reason why you have the vapor bay. But you can only do so much with a laptop that's like extremely small, and those laptops are sub 4-pounders. So that's kind of what you have to deal with. And when I look at this laptop, and I forget who did the review, I have to check, but there's a couple of reviews online where the guy actually went in and repasted the laptops just to see what the thermals would look like afterwards. Me personally, I don't mind repasting a system that I buy used, refurbished, I've had for a while, so the paste needs to be replaced, which actually I have to do that very soon on my kiddo's laptop. But I refuse to repaste a new laptop. I have a couple of problems with that, but number one being the price. And if you think about it, if you go to the Lenovo website today. If you go to the Lenovo website, you will see that, now this is before the sale, you can actually spec, I believe it was the P15. I was able to spec it up to like $8,000. Now don't get me wrong. I never buy the Lenovo's new when they're not on sale because that's just dumb. They have some fabulous sales. I'm patient enough. I will just wait. But what I'm saying is for someone to pay that amount of money for a laptop that they have to actually turn around and open up and do something too, I'm not going to do it. I would have a problem with that. So my thing is, Lenovo, sort your stuff before you sell it, or consumer. Once again, if it's me, I'm going to make the right decision. I'm going to pick the one that does the thing that I needed to do without me having to do anything special. And actually, when I looked at the video, I believe that even the throttling was pretty good, or I should say the minimal throttling was pretty good on the T15g, which, once again, larger frame. And I'm okay with that, because if you saw my first impression of the 4th gen X1 Extreme, that was like one of the things that I said. Like, why didn't they just make this a little bit larger? Because I don't want to deal with that. My X1 Extreme Gen 1 gets hot now. Now, I don't have a cooling bay because they didn't do that back when this one came out. But I don't want to deal with it. Because like I said, when it does start to throttle and I'm busy and I'm doing stuff, it starts to degrade the performance. And it's not fun. So yeah, I think that's about it. Overall, these both look like great laptops. I'm not in a rush right now to pick up a laptop, but if I was, for me, the T15 Gen 2 would be the one, because it just makes more sense for my workflow. If you have any questions, feel free, leave them down below, click like, subscribe, and Agent Fitz signing out.